I'm always looking around, I'm on the internet, I'm at flea markets, I'm watching what people are buying. You see things get popular really fast. Sometimes it's a simple little gadget, something you look at and think, I could make that. That's the spark right there. This time, I saw this little wooden phone stand everywhere. It was a simple design, just two interlocking pieces of plywood. It was selling like crazy online. People loved it because it was small, cheap, and did the job. Seeing that success gets my gears turning. It's not about just stealing an idea. It's about seeing potential and asking, how can I make this my own? How can I make it better? The idea of copying isn't a bad word to me. We all learn by copying. You copy the masters to learn to paint. You play other people's songs to learn guitar. In making, it's the same thing. You see a design that works, you take it apart in your mind, and you figure out why it works. The real creativity comes in the next step. It's the and then some. You take the core idea that everyone loves, and you add your own touch. You add quality, you add a better feel, you add a little something extra that makes people say, wow. That's the challenge I love. So, I ordered one of these viral phone stands. I needed to hold it in my hands. I wanted to feel the edges, see the cuts up close, and understand why it was so popular, but also where they cut corners. You can learn a lot from a product just by looking at it. You see the saw marks, the rough finish, the little imperfections. These are the opportunities. These are the areas where a maker like me can come in and elevate. I'll do the whole thing. It's about taking a mass-produced idea and turning it into something with a little more soul, a little more care put into it. This project isn't about getting rich off someone else's idea. It's an experiment. It's about understanding the market and what people want. It's about the craft. Can I take a simple, functional object and turn it into a piece of art that you'd be proud to have on your desk? Can I improve it in ways that make it more useful, more beautiful, and more durable? That's the goal. Let's take this simple little phone stand and see if we can give it the Diresta treatment. It's time to break it down and build it back up, better than before. The package arrived and I opened it up. Inside were two flat pieces of cheap plywood. The design was clever in its simplicity, I'll give it that. Two pieces, each with a slot, that slide together to form an X shape. It holds a phone, just like it promises. It's lightweight and packs, flat. I can see why it sells. For a few bucks you get something that solves a problem. It's a perfect example of a product designed for mass production and online sales. The focus is on being cheap and easy to ship. And they nailed that part of it for sure. But when I really started looking at it, I saw all the little problems. The edges were sharp and splintery. They clearly used a laser cutter or a CNC router on a fast setting, with no cleanup afterward. You could feel the roughness every time you picked it up. The plywood itself was low grade, with visible voids and patches on the surface. It felt flimsy, like it wouldn't take much to snap it. The finish was practically non-existent. It was just raw, unsealed wood, ready to soak up any spill on your desk and get stained forever. It did the job, but it had no personality. The stability was another issue. The base was a little too narrow. If you had a bigger phone, or tapped the screen too hard near the top, the whole thing would wobble. It felt unsteady. The slot that holds the phone was also a bit too wide for my phone, letting it sit at a sloppy angle. These are the kinds of details that get overlooked when the main goal is just to produce as many as possible for the lowest cost. They made a functional object, but they didn't make a quality object. There was no pride in the craftsmanship. So, here's the verdict on the original. It's a great idea with a budget execution. It works, but it's not a pleasure to use. It's disposable. You use it until it breaks or gets dirty, and then you toss it and buy another one. That's the modern way for a lot of products, but for me that's a huge opportunity. I knew I could address every single one of these issues. I could use better material, refine the design for more stability, and give it a finish that felt great in your hand. The original gave me a perfect roadmap of exactly what not to do. First things first, the material. That cheap plywood had to go. I went to my wood rack and pulled out a beautiful piece of solid walnut. It's strong, it's stable, and it has a gorgeous grain. Just by changing the material, you're already in a different league. I also had a nice piece of maple, and I thought about maybe doing a two-tone version. For this first one though, I stuck with the classic, elegant look of walnut. This isn't just about looking better. Solid wood is more durable and feels substantial in your hand. It has weight, it has presence. Next, I refined the design. I took the basic X shape, but I made some small important changes. I made the base of each piece just a little bit wider. We're talking maybe 1/4 of an inch. It's not a huge change, but it makes a world of difference for stability. The stand now has a more solid footing on the desk. I also adjusted the angle of the slot where the phone rests, making it a little more upright for a better viewing angle. And I made the slot itself a tiny bit narrower for a snugger, more secure fit. These are the little details that separate a good product from a great one. The real work came in the execution. I used my table saw and a crosscut sled to get perfectly clean, square cuts. No tear out, no rough edges. After cutting the main shapes, I took everything over to the router table. I used a small round over bit to ease all the edges. This is a critical step. It makes the piece feel soft and finished in your hand. No more sharp corners or splinters. It's a small detail that takes time, but it completely changes the tactile experience of the product. It's the difference between something that feels factory-made and something that feels handmade. Finally, the finish. This is where you bring the wood to life. I sanded everything meticulously, starting with a medium grit and working my way up to a super fine grit. The surface became smooth as glass. Then, I applied a few coats of a simple oil and wax finish. This isn't like a thick, plasticky varnish. This finish soaks into the wood, protecting it while also letting you feel the natural texture of the grain. It gives the walnut a deep, rich color and a subtle, beautiful sheen. Now it doesn't just hold your phone, it's a beautiful object you want to have on your desk. Putting my new walnut stand next to the original plywood one was like night and day. Honestly, it was almost funny. The original looked like a cheap toy, while mine looked like a piece of high-end desk furniture. The color and grain of the solid walnut immediately made the plywood look pale and lifeless. You could see the quality of the material right away. The rich, dark wood with its smooth, glowing finish just radiated quality, while the original piece just sat there looking flat and unfinished. It's kind of amazing how much of an impact the right material choice can make. When you pick them up, the difference was even more obvious. The original was feather-light and felt fragile, like you could snap it with your fingers. My walnut version had a satisfying heft to it. It felt solid, dense, and durable. Running your fingers over the edges told the whole story. The original was rough and sharp, a splinter just waiting to happen. Mine was perfectly smooth and rounded over, a pleasure to hold. It's that tactile feedback that really communicates craftsmanship. It tells the user that someone took the time to think about how this object would feel in their hands. Functionally, my improvements also stood out. I put my phone in the original stand, and it wobbled when I tapped the screen. The angle was a bit too relaxed for my taste. Then I put my phone in my new walnut stand. It sat securely in the narrower slot, no wobbling at all. The slightly wider base kept it firmly planted on the desk even when I gave it a good tap. The viewing angle was more upright and comfortable for glancing at notifications or watching a video. It was a clear demonstration of how a few small tweaks to the geometry of a design can lead to a big improvement in usability. This comparison really solidified the whole point of the project for me. It's not about reinventing the wheel. The basic idea of the original was good, but the execution was where it fell short. By focusing on the 3 key areas, better materials, cleaner craftsmanship, and a more refined design, I was able to elevate a simple, functional item into something special. It went from being a disposable gadget to a durable, beautiful tool. It's an object you would keep for years, not just for a few months. That's the power of good making. With my new and improved phone stand complete, the next step was to see what the world thought. The original was selling on places like Etsy and Amazon, so that's where I decided to list mine. I took some really nice photos, good lighting, a clean background showing the stand from all angles, highlighting the beautiful wood grain and the smooth edges. I even took a shot of it next to the original to show the comparison. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and I wanted my pictures to scream quality. I wrote a simple, honest description. I explained that it was my take on a popular design but made from solid walnut with a hand-sanded, oil-rubbed finish. I talked about the improved stability and the refined feel. I had to price it higher, of course. The original was selling for about $8. With the cost of the walnut and the time I put into the sanding and finishing, I had to list mine for $25. This was the big question. Would people be willing to pay 3 times more for a much better version of the same basic product? The first few days were quiet, which is normal. But then I got my first sale. And then another. I started getting messages from buyers. They said things like, "I saw the cheap ones but wanted something that would look nice on my desk," or "Thank you for making a quality version of this." It was incredibly rewarding to see that people recognized and appreciated the extra effort. They weren't just buying a phone stand, they were buying the craftsmanship, the better material, and the improved design. They understood the value. The sales started to pick up steadily. I wasn't selling thousands a day like the viral original, and I never expected to. I was targeting a different customer. My customer wasn't looking for the cheapest option. They were looking for the best option. They were willing to pay a premium for something that was well made, looked beautiful, and would last. It proved that there's a market for quality, even in a space dominated by cheap mass-produced goods. It showed me that you don't always have to compete on price. You can compete on quality and win. This project taught me a lot. The most important lesson is that there's incredible value in small improvements. I didn't invent a new product from scratch. I just took an existing popular product and made it about 20% better in every way. I used better wood, I made cleaner cuts, I sanded the edges, I used a nice finish, and I tweaked the design for stability. None of these were massive changes on their own, but together, they transformed the product from something cheap and disposable into something premium and desirable. Never underestimate the power of details. Another big takeaway is the balance between cost and quality. It's easy to make something cheap if you cut corners. It's also easy to make something amazing if you have an unlimited budget. The real challenge is finding that sweet spot in the middle. My stand was more expensive, but it wasn't outrageous. I had to be realistic about my time and material costs. By pricing it at $25, I found a point where it was affordable enough for people who appreciated quality, and it was still worth my time to make. This balance is critical if you want to turn a project into a product. This experiment also showed me how to stand out in a crowded market. When everyone else is zigging, you can zag. When the entire market is focused on being the cheapest, you can build a brand around being the best. There will always be a group of customers who are tired of cheap junk and are actively looking for well-made alternatives. By focusing on craftsmanship and telling that story through good photos and honest descriptions, you can attract those customers. You don't need to capture the whole market, just your little corner of it. So this was a fun and successful experiment. It proved that you can take a viral idea, add your own skill and care, and create something that finds its own audience. It reinforces my belief that making things well still matters. Now I look at other simple popular products and I can't help but wonder what else could be improved. What do you think? When you're shopping, do you usually go for the cheapest option, or are you willing to pay more for a better made version? Let me know your thoughts.